interesting reaction. But what does it mean? I'm Liam, this is Rob, and welcome to the third part of our Christmas season of Hey You Guys podcast. This week we look back at the best Tim Burton movie that isn't actually a Tim Burton movie. Arguably the most inaccurately attributed movie of all time, up there with not Steven Spielberg's Poltergeist. Henry Selick's stop-motion seasonal crossover spectacular 1993's The Nightmare Before Christmas seems to become more iconic and more beloved with each and every passing year. But as magical as it might be, has it finally won Rob's favour, or has his icy heart turned this Halloween Christmas classic?
What was that line you did at the beginning then? What does it mean? That's how I felt. But that's how I felt about this film. What does it mean?
Well, the thing is, it's an interesting thing with this one because it doesn't really mean much. It's got all the narrative depth of a puddle. And I think that speaks to its running time. Like, you know, I think it's a little more than 70 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's basically just a vehicle for imagination, amazing character design. Like, this is the stop motion equivalent of the cantina sequence in Star Wars. Like, how many cool characters can we get up on screen? And more than anything else, perhaps, it's just an excuse to have really good songs. And like any musical, because fundamentally, people like forget, because it's like animated, stuff like The Lion King, stuff like this, they don't think of them as musicals. But make no mistake, this is a musical. 70 minutes, like within the first 15 minutes of this film, you have three absolute bangers. And there's a lot to like about this film, but fundamentally, it doesn't work if the songs aren't magnificent. And the first half of this film in particular, the songs are amazing.
Wow, this is where we're going to differentiate then. First thing first, you said people think it's a Tim Burton film. I mean, it doesn't help that it's called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Have they actually changed the name now? Is it just known as Nightmare? I think they've changed it now. Like, for the longest time, it was called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, to the point where, and this is stepping on the video game section, there was a Oogie Boogie's Revenge, but it was called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie Boogie's Revenge. I'm like, oh my God, that's so long-winded. I think we've moved on from that now, but yeah, for the longest time, it was like Steven Spielberg's Poltergeist, I mentioned in the intro, but this was more egregious. And in fairness, obviously it's his design and it's so aesthetically Tim Burton, but yeah, he did not direct this fucking film.
And secondly, throughout, like, I'm not a huge fan of musicals anyway. It takes a lot for me to actually sit down and watch a musical, hence a podcast. But I'll give you one, maybe two songs. To call most of them bangers, I can't do it.
Dude, like in the first 10 minutes, you get This Is Halloween, absolute banger. You get Jack's Lament, which might be the best song in the film. Those two are back to back.
That's the one I don't like. I like This Is Halloween.
Love that one.
And I like that one where he's singing about
this
snow and stuff like that.
What's this? There's magic in the air. Yeah, that's, dude, all three of those songs are in the first 15 minutes of this film. Like, right, you think back to like other animated examples, the ones that live, again, the fact that they live and die, certainly in the long term based on their songs. Like Tangled, I know that's a strange example, but Tangled is an amazing Disney animated film. The one thing it's lacking, and the reason it's not talked about in the same way nowadays, is because it doesn't have that banger of a song. Whereas Frozen, which fundamentally isn't as good as a movie, but it has 4 or 5 absolutely unforgettable tracks. So it lives on in the consciousness. And it's the same with this. Like, if you open with This Is Halloween, Jack's Lament, and What's This, all within 15 minutes, I mean, Jesus Christ, man, you had me at hello.
I really didn't like that Jack talking about it or singing about himself song. And you know, I mean, so it turns out, I said I've seen this film once. I've probably only seen half of this film. So, because I do not remember the ending or halfway through. So I remember when those 3 kids kidnapped Santa.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember Oogie Boogie singing or anything like that. So
there's a good reason for that, probably, especially as you say, you're not a musical guy anyway. But as much as I love this film, and I do really enjoy this film, the major issue it has, beyond the aforementioned narrative as, you know, deep as a puddle, it's the fact that it runs out of steam about halfway through, whether it be in terms of character design, in terms of the songs even. It just doesn't quite know how to, you know, shut up shop, or maybe just the artist run out of steam, because, you know, this famously took years to make, because for every second of animation, it took them months of work or something ridiculous.
But you can see that on the screen. I'll give it, the animation looks fantastic. What I was really shocked about was Sally was played by Catherine O'Hara or
I had
O'Hara.
no idea. Yeah, I had no idea.
Because that is not Catherine O'Hara's voice as I know her.
No, but then I wasn't sure. I realized going into this, I didn't know any of the voice cast. Like, it was only because we did Fright Night recently that I knew that Jack Skellington was voiced by Chris Sarandon. I had no idea that Danny Elfman, for instance, did his singing voice.
Did the singing voice. And
No idea.
I mean, you're wrong in every way, shape, or form, but the fact you call it a great Christmas film, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Uncle Lewis was it, or Grandpa Lewis, or whatever. He was the voice of Sally's creator, Dr. Finkelstein, or whatever his name
Yeah. And again, you've got like a bunch of things in this film which don't really pay off. And I think the Sally and Dr. Finkelstein, whatever his name is one of those like, yeah, it is Finkelstein. It's kind of like what Weird Science should be. It's like, if you made this quote unquote beautiful girl to be your, and she just wants nothing to do with you. I thought that was a really interesting concept, which doesn't actually go anywhere. And even again, to go back to the second half of this film, when it really does run out of steam, it's a shame that it does, because it feels like there's still stuff to work with. Like, I feel like they could have done a lot more with Jack and Sally's relationship, for instance. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's just kind of
you could have had a lot more with Oogie Boogie as well.
Oogie Boogie in particular. Oogie Boogie is fantastic, and he's just kind of like, he pops in and disappears.
You just mentioned Jack and Sally. I finally understand the Blink-182 song, I Miss You.
Oh,
like we can live like Jack and Sally. I never got it.
You never had the link. Fair play. No. It's just like, who the fuck is Jack and Sally?
Yeah, Jesus Christ, I just thought they were two random names off the street. But oh my God, Oogie Boogie is the most promised thing that just seems to disappear really quickly, and it kind of upset me a little bit within this. Don't do it to Oogie Boogie. Don't take him to Oogie Boogie. Oh, Oogie Boogie's got a great song. He's got all, and he falters. So much could have been done with it.
Yeah, and it felt like it was really rushed, the Oogie Boogie stuff. Well, the Oogie Boogie thing.
The Oogie Boogie stuff, yeah. Is it a little racist with the
I don't think so.
No?
I didn't read into that at all. I mean, it's done by a black actor, so
yeah.
It's got that kind of Southern New Orleans kind of vibe to it, I think. Who's the name of the actor? Ken Page. He's also a singer as well.
Yeah.
But I love the Oogie Boogie stuff, and I loved his song. I love the design. But same as you, like so much in the second half, it feels a little bit rushed, and everything feels a tad inconsequential, sadly, which again is a shame, because, as I said, I know we might have slightly different views on this, but for like 40 minutes, I think this film's absolutely fantastic. It just keeps throwing more and more at the screen, more characters, more songs, more Jack, which we'll get to in a minute, because, this film has become iconic. But would it be if it wasn't for the fact that they nailed Jack's design? Like, he is absolutely essential. Like, he's become this like absolute alt icon. Like, he's gone in like the movie itself has gone on this amazing journey of being this kind of, unpopular stepchild of the Disney collection. And then all of a sudden, if you go to Disney, or there's a Disney video game or a Disney show, like, he's everywhere now. Like, they've basically
my missus
classic.
My missus loves him. She's got the bag, hoodies, all sorts of. We got Jack and Sally fucking. I never knew their names, but we got them hanging on our Christmas tree.
Yeah, well, that's the level it's come to. I mean, this was like seen as a cult classic 20 years ago, but now it's Disney mainstream. Make no mistake. Like, Disney released this film under the Touchstone Pictures banner, reserved for titles with more mature themes than standard Disney fare. The obvious one that stands out is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, was released under the same banner.
Yeah.
And now it does just as much as, I would argue, like Mickey and Elsa. It is literally everywhere. And as I said, it comes down to the fact that he was an alt, and he remains an alt icon. When I was younger, I used to kind of associate Jack Skellington with places like, over here it'd be Blue Banana, in America it'd be Hot Topic, that kind of alt goth girl, rock girl kind of vibe. Yeah. Now it's just anyone, and I think
you see it in the Disney shop. We saw it the other week, and I think it was like my wife's seen it in Primark. It's just everywhere. It's ridiculous. I had to Google it, because I wanted to make sure it's not just me, and no, I think it's you. So the Nightmare Before Christmas screenwriter Carolyn Thompson said that she thinks the character Oogie Boogie is racist and insensitive. She went on to say that he wears a pointed hat, pointed hood, looks like a Ku Klux Klansman, while Oogie Boogie is an old Southern derogatory phrase for an African American.
Well, maybe I'm seeing too much with my white brain and my white eyes that I just didn't
I
pick it up. I just thought it was like a cool character design,
I just
personally.
when he started dancing, he was in the shadow and everything, and Oogie Boogie. I was just like, oh my god, this feels so insensitive.
Oh, maybe
Yeah,
I'm just blind to, or maybe I'm just kind of like, I don't know. It feels like everyone's trying to find something
living in your
in
ivory
everything
tower.
nowadays.
You
Yeah,
live in your
maybe
ivory
it would
tower.
be an ivory tower as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would
Jesus
be, wouldn't
Christ.
it?
But to bring it back, like, I guess the question is like, why is this movie? Why is it remain so popular, and why is it still so popular today? And I think the major reason, beyond obviously the fantastic artistic design, the great songs and stuff, is that it creates an accessibility point for like the spookier side of film. I've heard it described as it's creepy but never violent, twisted but never cruel. It's kind of like the friendlier version of say like Poltergeist or Gremlins. And we've said it like a bunch of times on this podcast. Like kids like to be scared, and this is a really strong starting point for many. It's like the next film, one of the next films the director did was like Coraline,
I
and that
wanted to
feels like
say
an
Caroline. That feels like the progression of this in the creepy
Mhm,
side of it. This is set in Halloween,
mhm.
where everything should be scaring you, but I don't feel it doesn't feel as murderous as say Coraline does.
No. Well, the difference is with Coraline, it's maybe a bit more relatable, and there's a tad more existential threat in that film. And like that film, even though it's not like you say based on Halloween, it is a legitimately scarier film. Where this feels like it's more that kids level. And it's like a perfect evolution. Like if you wanted to get into horror, it's like you could start with this, then you would jump to like the Monster Squad, then you go to Poltergeist, then you might go to like Nightmare on Elm Street before finally ending up with like Hereditary or something truly horrifying like that. But yeah, this is like a great starting point for kids. And I think that's why parents can put this on, because again, kids like to be scared or like the concept of something horror related, but without any actual fear of being scared. Because there's nothing scary about this film beyond the design.
No, but one of the songs. I think it was the "This Is Halloween" one. There
Mhm.
was it made me think about that as well because this is for kids and scaring kids and everything. And there was the part in that song where it's "I'm the one that lives under your bed. I'm the one that lives under your stairs," and I thought that was a bit touch and go for kids, maybe.
Yeah, but if it's like entry level for kids, if they can't handle like Jack Skellington of all people being under, like
Well,
if
Jack
something's going to
Skellington, I
be
get
under
it,
your bed, it might
but
as
they're
well be the
telling them that
ultimate.
they're telling them that something creepy is living under their bed. I'm sorry, that is a bit rough for a kid watching this film.
I
I
don't
think.
know, man. I think they're fine. I mean, geez, I jumped straight past this. I went straight to like Gremlins and stuff like
Yes,
that as a kid, and
like I've never watched this because I moved past this already, and I
yeah,
was
yeah,
watching
yeah.
things like Monsters. And I'm not saying for me, I'm thinking about I don't want to go there for all the kids that are raised now, not
Oh
the
well,
kids that were
honestly,
raised in
right?
the 80s or the 90s.
If you can't deal with a Nightmare Before Christmas, you don't deserve to live, as far as I'm concerned. It's like you don't go outside. Jesus Christ. Like eventually, like if this scares your kid, good. They need toughening up, as far as I'm concerned. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but if they can't deal with a Nightmare Before Christmas, how the fuck can they deal with outside your house? It's madness.
The
But
greatest parent speech ever. Well done,
I
mate.
know. Speaking of, like, well, if we were to move to the adult side of the conversation related to this film, a strange thing about Jack Skellington, I always think he's seen as something of a sex symbol. Does that make sense to you?
No.
Like I was looking at it and I asked my wife, I was like, do you think he's seen it? And I don't mean sex as in actual sex, but I
Yeah,
was like,
no.
is there something about him? And I was like, yeah, there's a reason all these girls have Jack Skellington and stuff on their bag. It's not just a cool design. And I looked online to see if I was being crazy. And he was number one on a list of Tim Burton characters who caused your sexual awakening. So it's not just me thinking this. It's
Where was
like
Beetlejuice on that list?
he wasn't. Well, maybe if he was much lower down. But there's a certain type of girl who appears to be obsessed with Jack. Like he's weird but friendly. He's like king of the alt crowd. He dresses well and he's a scientist. He ticks a lot of boxes. And I think for a lot of like young girls, especially quote unquote alt girls, it's like relatable for those who felt like if they're misunderstood or destined for more than their circumstances allowed, all that jazz. It's like you can latch onto this character. And I think it's not just the design. I think it's the actual way he's written as well, and the way the
Yeah.
actor obviously delivers the lines that has made him as iconic as Jack ultimately has become.
You know when Jack goes into Christmas land
Mm-hmm.
and he's looking around and everything, and it's like the snow's on the ground and the snowflakes are
Mm-hmm.
falling. Why is the snow on the ground tiny,
Mm-hmm.
but why are the snowflakes bigger than his hand? Like, how do they, when they land, then how do they become that snow on the ground?
This is such a wrong question. I have no idea. I have no idea.
It's ridiculous.
Like everything else in this film, I think it's like, like I said, it suffers from the fact that the narrative doesn't really go anywhere. There's not a huge amount of depth really that, if you start digging below the surface. And the design, he's just like, well, if it looks cool. And the other element of it could be, this was made in 1992, released in 1993.
Yeah.
Well, even starting before, I think production went on for a number of years because it took so long to put the stop motion animation together, is that there were limitations. So it's like a lot of stuff is probably there just because it's like, well, this has to work. It's like Jack's iconic pinstripe suit. It wasn't pinstriped. Like when they first started filming it, it was all black, but it didn't show up properly. So they're like, well, we'll have to ask the pinstripes. So I think a lot of it is just, well, this is how much we can do because there wasn't any CG or anything like that to switch it up. It was old-fashioned stop motion animation.
It's funny, isn't it? You mentioned the cast earlier on, and we know most of the main cast, but you wouldn't have guessed it. Like, so you've already said Danny Elfman as the singing voice, Chris Sarandon, Catherine O'Hara, William Hickey, who I've just said, Glenn Shaddix is the mayor. Now, Glenn Shaddix is, I think it's Otho.
Yeah, Otho. Yeah,
Paul Rubens. Pee Wee Herman plays one of the kids. And then the only other one I really know from this is Greg Poop. And I know him from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah. He was always my favorite member of Who Line Is It? Because I'm not sure if it was for everyone, but when I was younger, that show was massive because it was on Channel 4.
So, I think we should preface it with the UK version with Clive Anderson.
Yeah, sorry. There is a US version of Whose Line Is It Anyway, which has been running for years. Also, I mean, that's actually made it over to the UK because that's still running, the US version.
The second one. So the first one was with Drew Carey, was it? Or Carey, however you say it.
Yeah.
And then it ended and they brought it back with, I don't know her name, unfortunately.
Aisha Thompson?
Yeah. Aisha Turner, maybe?
I thought it was Aisha Thompson. It might be. I might be.
Yeah. Well,
she's very good anyway.
They brought it back with her, and that's been going since like 2009. I think it's on like 20 odd seasons. So yeah, it's been going good. Yeah.
No, it's just like I said, like when I was younger, when we were younger, most people only had 4 channels, and this was on Channel 4. So it's like everybody seemed to watch it, and Greg Proops was just like a perennial favorite, I think, amongst most people. So he was one of those, like, they did kind of push him towards movies for a bit. He was in a few as like bit part characters, but he never quite caught on, did he? He was never like, never moved beyond. Like everyone knows him from that show rather than a movie. That's for sure.
Yeah. We've said a lot about the behind the scenes kind of thing, but we haven't really talked about the film. And I think the reason why is because there's not much really to, aside from the look and the songs, there's not much really then to talk about it, unless you want to pick things out from it, because again, it doesn't seem to really go anywhere or do anything. It's just, it seems to be a calling card for what you can do with stop motion.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. Like, if you wanted to aim genuine criticism towards this film, it's the fact that the narrative not only just doesn't go anywhere, there isn't much to work with. As you said, fundamentally, I think the running time is down as close as 80. But once you take away like the credits and stuff, it's actually a little over 70 minutes. And if you think how much of the film is actually just songs, it's there's not much time left for there to be kind of character development or anything like that. It's basically, I mean, this started off as a poem, and it has that feeling. It's like, well, can we stretch out this poem to, a TV show? Well, if we can do that, can we stretch it out to a movie? It's like, yeah, it's going to be a pretty short movie. The other thing I will say, and, we already kind of alluded to it, is the fact that it does feel like there was more than enough there for them to stretch this out. Like we said, we wanted more Oogie Boogie. It would have been good to see more Jack and Sally on screen. And they've just kind of swept it all under the rug. And that does mean, it works for every age group. Like, no kid's going to get bored watching this because it moves at 1,000 miles per hour. It's song. There's always something interesting to see. And it, in its defense, I suppose, it never outstays its welcome. And even if you're not crazy about it, like you weren't, it's like, it's kind of been and gone before you know what's going on, if that makes sense. It's like, even if you're not crazy about the songs, it's not like, Dancer in the Dark standing Bjork. It's like when I realized that was a 3-hour movie, and I was like, that's a very different film, despite the fact that it's a musical. It's a lot more depressing, that's for sure, and very, very fucking long. But this film, like the second half, it just kind of drifts away. And I found, even though I've seen this film a bunch of times, I was the same as you. The second half, I was like, I can hardly remember this. And why? Because it hasn't got great songs in the second half, and nothing really happens, and then it just ends, and that's it. So there are criticisms that can be pointed towards this film, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't.
But I think it gets away with it because of the fact that, like I said, I know you're not as big on them, but because it's got great songs, because it's got great animation and great characters, it really is. It almost feels more like a kind of roller coaster, if that makes sense, than a full feature length film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think Jack. Well, the first thing is, controversially, I think I don't. There's nothing on here to keep you coming back. For people to say this is my favorite film and everything like that, I think now the fact that Jack and Sally have become icons in their own right, you have them now without you. People say, "Oh, I love this film because of Jack and Sally," but Jack and Sally is a different beast now. It's a different animal as has moved on.
Yeah,
because you go to watch if because there are people who actually have the Jack and Sally characters in their mind who's never seen this film, and I think like me, but I didn't know they were Jack and Sally. Like, but if you go back and link it into this film and watch this film, I don't think it grips you as much. I think it has to be something that you watched from childhood to actually understand what. Well, not understand, but to enjoy what was going on, because a lot of questions, and I know it's a kids' film, and I know like nothing happens. You don't have to worry too much about it, but Jack and Sally felt like that their relationship's not going to last because all of a sudden, then he doesn't speak to her for most of the film, and then at the end, he's like, "All right, then I'll hook up with you because you're the only feminine-looking thing in Halloween Town."
Yeah. There aren't many options, admittedly, and there aren't many girls for one, and certainly not as many on the kind of more traditionally good-looking scale. I know she's got like a lot of stitch and stuff, but you know what I mean. They seem like a good fit, but I think back to your point, the fact that you have to grow up with it, like in terms of that attachment, I think that's true because again, you watch it at a young age. It doesn't go too much into the lovey-dovey stuff. That is going to put you off when you're not interested at a young age. But then once you get into your teenage years, you can kind of there's like an implication of a deeper relationship there. And as I said, I think people project onto this film the whole idea of these kind of like alternative characters finding love together. And I think it's as important that they don't look like traditional Disney prince and princesses as much as anything, as much as any aspect of the narrative. I think it's literally just, oh, look, that's my alternative Disney prince and princess. And I think that's, for some people, that's more than enough. It's like a weird sense of representation, but not in the more modern sense of the term.
As I've said as well about their love not lasting, I'm pretty sure Jack's going to want to keep her around because, I mean, he can get a hand job while she's in another room. He doesn't.
Well, there is that. I mean, if she's going to be cool about it, I suppose. She does use her sexuality to, good effect with Oogie Boogie when she waves her leg around, despite the fact that she's on the other side of the room. So, she's got a leg as well.
He's serenading a leg.
Yeah, well, that's like one of the most old-fashioned tropes of movies. It was like the idea of the girl behind the curtain just showing you a bit of leg. This goes right back to the start of cinema. So she knows the classics if nothing else. But I don't know. I think Jack and Sally will absolutely stand the test of time. One, because there's no alternative, and two, because she has rekindled his love with Halloween, which brings us to one of the most important questions for this podcast, because this is a Christmas movie podcast. Is this a Christmas movie or a Halloween movie? Because when I thought back to it, I was like, it clearly works as both. That's undeniable. However, I had it in my mind. I was like, well, if I had to put it into one pot, I'd say it's a Christmas movie, like 51% to 49. Rewatching it, I've completely changed my mind. I'm actually in the same camp as the director. The director said it was a Halloween film, and I'm inclined to agree. I look at this film now, and I think it's a Halloween movie about Christmas, rather than a Christmas movie about Halloween.
I don't think it's a Christmas film. There's no Christmas miracle. There's no anything like that. It's just Santa doing his job at this point, but it's all around Halloween. So
yeah, it's predominantly. That's why I think it won't get me wrong. You can obviously watch this at Christmas. There's enough Christmas. If we're going to call Die Hard a Christmas movie, you can call this a Christmas movie. But if I had to put it into one camp, it's Halloween before Christmas for that exact reason. Most of the story happens in Halloween Town. It's the Halloween people going on something of a Christmas adventure. But it's Halloween first as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I totally agree in regards to that, because it's all about the spirit of Halloween as well. It's rekindling his love for Halloween. He's
Yeah,
seeing because
not Christmas. It's yeah, yeah.
no, the grass is always greener on the other side. He's seen something. What I do
Mhm,
like about it, he's not trying to openly scare people. He's just giving people what he thinks are great gifts and things like that.
mhm, mhm,
He's saying, "Oh, Christmas and Halloween can combine," but
mhm.
unfortunately, I've given you a snake that eats a tree, or I've given you,
Yeah,
spiders or whatever.
he's
To him,
always
that
he's always good intentioned.
yeah,
Although I
so
tell you
not
what, though, there is the opportunity for this film. As much as we mentioned the fact that we think it's a Halloween film rather than a Christmas film, and I know they've said that they're unlikely to do a sequel. I think Henry Selick's much more open to the idea than Tim Burton's basically said no.
because Henry
But there
Selick's
were,
not doing anything else.
yeah, yeah, well, there is that. But there was the opportunity here to have a very different film. Because when he goes into the forest, you notice the four doors. There's obviously the Christmas door. There's also a Valentine's door, a Thanksgiving door, and a fucking St. Patrick's door.
Yeah.
Imagine
And
this
Easter, mind.
movie if he'd gone through St. Paddy's door
Yeah.
and Easter, sorry.
Yeah.
So what you just this film would have been Jack Skellington with a bunch of pissed
So, dude,
Irishmen. It's like such a weird concept.
what? I mean, I'd love to see leprechauns running around with a shillelagh,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. Well,
swinging around.
fucking why not? I
So,
suppose.
so go back to that, to what you just said then in regards to the doors. What doors did you say? Because I saw a
Well,
couple more.
they're on the tree. So there was a Valentine's door, I think,
Yeah,
a Thanksgiving door because it had a turkey
Thanksgiving.
on
Yeah,
it,
that's yeah,
St. Patrick's, and an Easter door.
yeah. I saw another one as well. I can't. I'm trying to think now where I saw.
I thought it was five. I thought, but maybe there
Was
was
it
another one. I
five?
can't remember. But
But I didn't look at that door, mind. I looked at the doors, the beginning when
mhm.
the narrator comes on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Which
Uh,
is interesting because if you listen to the official soundtrack,
Christmas. Oh, that there's Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, Independence Day,
oh
Valentine's Day,
well,
and
I
St.
missed that
Patrick's
one.
Day.
Independence Day. That
In
would
the
be so
the
fucking bland.
Independence Day land. Is that just a lot of
I guess it'd
people
be
shouting
native.
freedom?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it'd be very odd. But
How is that a fucking door? What would be on that? Oh my god, Google this now. I want to know what image the Independence Day door would.
yeah, yeah, I can't even remember that. Well, maybe it's just because it would have to be bland. Independence. Is that the thanks? So it's not the Thanksgiving door, it's the Independence Day door.
No, Thanksgiving's
I
next to
can't
it.
even.
According to this, the holiday
Yeah,
themed
yeah.
worlds are Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, Independence Day, Valentine's Day, and St. Patrick's Day.
Well, thank God he picked Christmas because nearly all the others are shit. You can make an argument for Easter maybe with the whole Easter Bunny thing, but like a St. Patrick's Day, I thought Thanksgiving was bad, but an Independence Day door, Jesus fucking Christ. It's like a bank holiday Monday door. Like, have a bit of imagination.
Yeah.
In a movie so rich in imagination, they chose Independence. Maybe it was an in joke. I don't know. But anyway, needless to say, it does set itself up for sequels if it wanted to. But
Yeah.
obviously, they've decided that this is this like, and it is, if nothing else, and I know it's not directed by Tim Burton, but aesthetically and narratively, this is pure Tim Burton. There's no two ways about it. And it's almost a miracle that it has become this like mainstay, this juggernaut of, the Disney empire now.
Yeah. I
Sorry,
found
you
the
look like you're about to
doors.
say something. Okay,
I
here we
found
go.
the
Here we go.
doors. Right. So obviously Halloween Town was a pumpkin.
Mm-hmm,
St. Patrick's Day was a four-leaf clover.
mm-hmm,
Easter was an egg. This is fantastic. Uh, Christmas was the tree.
mm-hmm,
Valentine's Day was the heart. Thanksgiving was a turkey.
mm-hmm.
And Independence Day was, I want to say, a book with 4 stars on it.
Oh God! Like, yeah, it's as boring as it sounds. It's fucking terrible. To have like designed worlds and one of them be Independence Day world. It really should have
Exactly.
aliens on the front. That'd be much more awesome.
Yeah.
But,
Just picture Will Smith on the front of something.
oh yeah, but that came out the year after, didn't it? No, no.
Oh,
When
3 years
was?
after, it was
Oh yeah, it was
96. Yeah.
'96, wasn't it? Of course, it was. But the one thing I'll say about this film, or whatever you might think of it, it's like it's been so massively influential, and I think the ongoing popularity of this film has fundamentally allowed the stop motion genre to exist in many respects. Like, do you think stuff like, when I think of stop motion now, I obviously think of Leica and the amazing, like Kubo and the Two Strings is one of the best films I've seen in a long time. It's an
Oh, I
absolutely
love that film. Is that
phenomenal.
that's the one with Matthew McConaughey as the beetle?
Yeah. That's
Yeah, yeah. I love that
that
film.
film.
I think it's great.
But
Yeah.
you obviously you've got Coraline, which was also directed by Henry Selick. But and Paranorman, that was another one of theirs, absolutely fantastic. But not only do they all owe a huge debt of gratitude to the popularity of The Nightmare Before Christmas, but you can see in the design, and I'm not sure if it was like a chicken and egg thing, but even though they're not exactly the same, it feels like it's been so influential on the aesthetic design of all future stop motion movies. And again, maybe that's because of the continued involvement of Henry Selick, and then it goes into Leica, so it makes sense that there's going to be that crossover. But they almost feel like with the Doors, if he went through the door with the instrument with the two strings, he wouldn't look completely out of place in Kubo and the Two Strings, or Paranorman, for instance, or in Coraline. I know he makes a very brief appearance in Coraline. I think it's in The Soup or some shit like that. But that aesthetic design has run through all of those movies. But it all, I feel, comes back to the popularity of A Nightmare Before Christmas, which has just shown no signs whatsoever. If anything, it's getting more and more popular every year. Like if you see now with Disney Plus, both at Halloween and at Christmas, it's so predominantly advertised. And that is the magic of it. It's like, Mariah Carey, how much money has she made from making a Christmas song, which they play forever?
Yeah.
Like she's arguably missed a trick by not calling it All I Want for Christmas or Halloween Is You. This movie's bagged two of the major holidays, and it will be dragged out in perpetuity for time immemorial. It will just go on forever, this film, because again, aesthetically, it's aged so beautifully. Like, stop motion animation, like there are limitations, which you can see linking it back to 1993. But for the most part, I think if a kid watches this now, I don't think he looks at it and necessarily goes, this looks old. It's just a different style of animation, but it still looks great to this day, especially with like the 4K updates and all that jazz.
I think it looked great. I watched it on Disney Plus, and I do think it looked great. I think the animation looked smooth. There was a part that really impressed me. I think it's at the end when Jack comes back from the dead, so to speak, as they all thought he got blown up. And when he's on his car and they go through this mausoleum gate, they just decided, instead of making that bigger, they just decided they were going to animate him ducking.
Yeah.
So like that's such a inconspicuous thing to have to put in it. But it's one thing you notice, because that's probably like a day's work as well, just to get
100%.
to go
100%.
under the gate. So
any additional movement is going to take days and days of animation.
Yeah, I think it looked great though. I honestly do.
To bring it back, actually, supposedly the scene at where you had the trees and like the different gates, when he goes and reaches for the handle and you can see his reflection in the handle, supposedly that was the most difficult shot to pull off in the entire film. It was an absolute nightmare. Now, of course, they would touch it with CG, remove things, but with just classic stop motion animation, that shot supposedly was an absolute fucking nightmare.
You know what really kind of took me out of it as well? Because I don't know whether it was actually, I wanted to say real life. When she puts her pre-drilled spoon in the poison for her dad, that's not animation, is it?
What do you mean?
It didn't look like animation, because it has a close-up of the bowl of liquid. She puts it in and it drains through. It didn't look like animation. It looked like real life. So I don't know. That kind of took me out of it.
I think it's stop motion still. I don't think
it was.
I haven't read anything about a live action scene in the film. I think it's all
live action.
I think it's all classic stop motion. I think in this film. So if they have tricked you at that point, I think they have legitimately tricked you with again, very impressive animation weird because 30 years ago.
The way the camera moved to the liquid going through it, it felt really strange. Like it didn't feel like the rest of the film.
Maybe it is a combination. To be honest, I didn't really pay attention to it, so it certainly didn't drag me out of the film. But I'd have to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah,
but yeah, there are a lot of very, very cool tricks used in this film, and you got to think like even back in 1993, it wasn't like everyone was using stop motion. Like in every respect, this was rubbing up against the grain. Like in 1993, the film. Sorry, there's a bloody ambulance going past outside of the police. They're just going to stop outside my house. Jesus,
you Christ, carry on, mate. We can't hear that.
You can't hear that. Oh, thank God, it's so loud here. But you think like back at like 92, 93, whatever, it's like we're dealing with like The Lion King. This is like classic. Like this is arguably the peak of Disney's powers in terms of like they've just come back with Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Lion King. Like this is a genuinely classic era. And then Tim Burton comes and says, "I want to make this." You can see why maybe they didn't want to tag it as a classic Disney film, because everything about it is the complete opposite of everything that is proving popular in the early 90s. And don't get me wrong, those have all lived on and done very well themselves. But again, I think it's fantastic. And again, I think that is maybe one of the primary reasons that this film has lived on for so long, is because it was so unique, especially back then. Like, you think it's changed Disney's approach. Would they have made films like Coco, for instance, if they hadn't had the success with this 25 years prior? I'm just not sure if they would have. This was really one of the first movies that broadened the horizons of Disney design. Like most things, like up to that point, that are Disney films just look like Disney films. This does not look. This looks like a Tim Burton film for obvious reasons. But I think that has allowed them to stretch their creative wings somewhat and not kind of stay, so it's like adhere to that classic Disney template in such a strong way. So yeah, I think it plays a really important part in Disney's history in many respects.
I kind of agree with that. It's helped them shape their future of animation storytelling as they've gone on. I say storytelling in the loosest term, Mike, because I still don't think there was a story in this.
Well, again, it's the aesthetic thing, but it's more classic Disney in its own unique way. And the fact that this is only 70 minutes long, it's like if you go back and watch like the classic Disney going way back, like Dumbo, people think of it as this feature film. It's 60 minutes long. It's very broad strokes. And even some of their earlier animation, none of them are particularly long, and the stories are fine. But what really stands out, the ones that really, again, live long in the memory are the ones with those brilliant songs, the ones, the earworms that live on. And again, it's because if somebody steps into a room and you've seen this film 100 times, you don't care about the narrative. You're just like, oh, it's Jack's Lament again. Oh, it's what's this again? And you're in. And because, again, it's 70 minutes long, you're like, well, I might as well watch it to the fucking end. Why not?
Well, this film's quite funny, isn't it? Because we've been talking now, coming close to maybe 40 odd minutes. And we haven't really talked about a lot of the stuff that happened in the film, because you can't. We've just talked about how great it looks and the impact that it's had and things like that. It's one of those weird ones. Usually we can have a lot to say about what's gone on in the film, but for this, it's more for what the film has given us.
No, exactly. Like the point is, if you don't like the aesthetic of this film and you don't like the songs, fucking forget about it. There's nothing for you. There's literally there is the bare bones of a story somewhere. And it is a good idea in that kind of write it on a postcard. Oh, the king of Halloween wants to have a crack at Christmas. That is literally the idea. And that's as far as it goes. And that's absolutely fine, because again, the songs are great, because the design's fantastic, and because it does have these iconic characters at the center of it. And those are the reasons it's lived on. Like you said, it's not because of the narrative. I don't think you're at all unique in not being able to remember the second half of this film. How's it end? Who gives a shit? What about that song? Yeah, I love that fucking song. That's absolutely fine. Not every film has to be like this deep masterpiece. Some films, especially musicals, as I said, very few films nail both. Like, oh, that's a great film and it's got all the bangers. It's like, yeah, this doesn't have a fantastic story. It's got an interesting story, but it's got the music, it's got the characters.
But again, that's where we differ, because I don't think, aside from two songs, I don't think maybe three. Oogie Boogie could drill into my mind a little bit, but at the moment, I just thought the two at the beginning, without Jack bitching about his song.
I will say, in its defense, you say only two, maybe three. There are a lot of musicals which don't even have one. Like, that's the point.
Okay,
like some films, they live on because they've got one amazing song which everyone remembers, and then they end up watching the film just for this one song. This film, I mean, I would argue that it's got 4 or 5 really good songs, but 3 undoubted bangers. That's 3 more than fucking most, man. And I think, again, that's the reason.
Well, you've watched more musicals than I have, mate. So I'll give you that one. Should we move on to the next section?
Well, favorite scene. You're gonna love this one. Yeah. So my favorite scene is probably Jack's Lament, just because it's my favorite song. I know you're not first on the song, but when I think of like my favorite bit of this film, it's almost inevitably a song. And that's my favorite. Don't get me wrong, it could have totally been the opening. This is Halloween. It could have been What's This? Like, they're all great songs, but my favorite is Jack's Lament. So I'm going to put that down as my favorite scene.
I mean, I'll have to give you that. That's your favorite scene. I can't take it away from you.
I'm not having
Mark,
it. I'm calling bullshit on your
I might have
favorite
to call
scene. You can
bullshit.
take your favorite scene and you can fuck it right off, Sunshine.
I've said I like the animation in this, and
Mhm.
none more so than the Jack and Oogie Boogie fight. The
Yeah.
way the cards come up and they've got the swords on and
Mhm.
everything's running around, and the way Jack's moving so fluidly.
Fluidly. Yeah,
Yeah, is that a
fluidly.
word?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
fluidly.
fluidly,
I
definitely,
was questioning myself, and I wanted to say fluidity,
yeah.
but that's not going to work.
Mhm.
I think it's great. I
Mhm.
honestly think, and that's why I think we should have had more Oogie Boogie.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I think I completely agree with you. Like, and the great thing about that Oogie Boogie sequence is that aesthetically, it belongs in the universe, but it feels different to everything else. It's like a
yeah,
different style of horror. As I said, it's more what I think of as being like kind of that New Orleans style horror.
yeah.
And it would have been cool to have a bit more of it because it looks so amazing. But yeah, that's one of the problems of the film. There just wasn't enough time for it, apparently. In terms of loves, number one, classic unfiltered Burton aesthetic. It really does feel like a Burton film back to front aesthetically. I know he didn't direct it. Number two, Jack Skellington proving so iconic. I also love the fact that he's actually called Jack Skellington rather than Jack Skeleton.
Jack
It's like
Skeleton. Yeah.
how you want to say it as a kid. It's like because of Rihanna now, nobody wants to say umbrella. We all want to say umbrella. We want to add in that extra vowel somewhere. And it's like, yeah, we're told at some age that we like skeletons. It's skeleton, not skellington. And I think it was like I went into a chippy and ordered a pompadom when I was younger, and the guys in there fucking slaughtered me. And
I mean, I
like,
would mind. You called it a pompadom.
my parents call them pompadoms. And I go in, and I probably sound racist as fuck. 6 pompadoms, please. And they're like, oh, little white boy, they're pompadoms. Oh, for fuck's sake. And everyone in the fucking chippy was laughing at me because I said pompadoms. So anyway, Jack Skellington, fantastic. And number 3, the fact that there are just so many bangers. Like I said, you don't get many musicals with so many great catchy songs, especially crammed into 70 minutes. But I think it kind of has more of an impact because all the bangers are in the first half of the film. So it feels like for 40 minutes, you're just getting great song, great song, great song. It tails off in the second half, I will admit that.
So for me, I like there was the animation. I've already said that's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that kept me going. The animation is great in this. A random one, the fact that Danny Elfman made his singing voice sound like Chris Sarandon. Because
Amazing, right? I never know.
there's
I just assumed it was the same fucking person.
yeah, there doesn't seem to be any difference between Chris
Nope.
Sarandon's talking voice and Danny Elfman's singing voice. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
feels like a genuinely natural fit. It just sounds like Chris Sarandon's singing voice, but it's Danny Elfman. It's amazing.
and I'm gonna have to give it to a song as well. I can't stop humming that fucking "What's this thing? What's this? What's this? There's something over here. What's this? What's this?"
Dude, honestly, right? Because I always like the songs, but I started playing them in the kitchen if we're, when we're doing cooking or just hanging around in the kitchen, whatever, for Halloween originally,
Yeah.
and now I've started playing them again for Christmas, and I just can't get the songs out of my head. But yeah, what's this is a proper earworm.
And I'm gonna have to give you a fourth as well.
Cool,
I
go for
liked
it.
I liked what was his name? Oogie Boogie's voice actor, Ken
Ken Page.
Ken Page. Yeah,
Yeah, he's great. He's fantastic in it. In terms of hates, number one, the second half drifts a bit. Like I said, it really does run out of steam. There's no two ways about it. Number two, the songs are also front loaded. Again, that speaks to the fact that the second half just isn't as good. And we've mentioned it a bunch of times, but Oogie Boogie could have done with more screen time. I think it speaks to the arguable issue of aesthetic over narrative in this film, which arguable. I think that's factual, if anything. But I just don't see why they couldn't found an excuse to get more Oogie Boogie in this film because he's brilliant.
for me, number one, the lack of story. Just it's more towards look at what we can do with stop animation and the story. And the way I say that is because when you mention a lot of the stop animation ones, one of the films that I really enjoyed that's come along later is the Box Trolls,
Yeah, that's really good as well.
and I also think that's a great story. I think that's a
That doesn't
fantastic
have that's
story.
not a musical though, is it? That is
No, it's not a
literally just
musical.
a film. Yeah, which I
Yeah.
think again puts it into a different category. But even by I will admit by musical standards, the story, the narrative, the character development here is paper thin.
Number three, not number three, number two, I've got to go with the fact that there didn't seem to be anything between Jack and Sally until he realized there was no other girl around and she can detach her hands.
Yeah, yeah, no, you are right because there really wasn't like you got the whole idea that she was yearning for him, like in the
Yeah,
background. And I get why she would be into him. It's like he's the king of Halloween or whatever the pumpkin king. I get it, he's all very charming and stuff, but he literally doesn't give her a second look. And then all of a sudden at the end, he's just in love with her. And don't be
yeah.
wrong, you get the great bit with the moon. Like it's worth it for the aesthetic because it looks amazing. But literally, there is no sign of any interest until the end when it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm totally head over heels with you. It's like, oh, there was nothing to back that up at all.
No, they barely spoke.
Yeah, I know, no, no, like, they'd sown the seed from her perspective. They did more than enough from Sally's perspective. Like her whole narrative is the fact that she's clearly in love with Jack and she's doing her best to get him on the right path. She's the only person who can see that he's making a mess of things, that he's not suited to Christmas, blah blah blah. But there was nothing coming in the opposite direction
No.
at all. Nothing.
And number three, there was no build up on the fact that she seems to have premonitions, except she's going, I just hope it doesn't come true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, there was
Another
no
one of those
hint that
elements is underplayed. Yeah.
she did. They don't say, oh, by the way, this chick can see the future, or she can look at a flower and do all
I
this.
wish one of the characters had just said that. It's like, dude, do you know this chick can see the future, right? Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I mean, listen to her, mate. Listen to her.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. You're right. You're absolutely right. Are there any odd titles for this film other than perhaps Henry Selick's Nightmare Before Christmas?
Well, yeah, there are. There's Henry Selick and Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Right, I got a few for you. So Albania, The Christmas of Jack.
Terrible.
Argentina, Jack's Strange World.
Terrible.
So we got here, Jack Strange. Croatia, Pre-Christmas Nightmare.
I don't know. That has oddly sexual connotations. I don't know why. I don't care for it.
Estonia just picking words out of a hat at this point. Pre-Christmas Horror Fairy Tale.
Yeah, that's like they run it through like Google Translate 17 times, and that's what it comes out as.
What else we got here? Kazakhstan. They haven't been
What
one of ours
country?
lately. Zakistan.
Zakistan.
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, you mean?
Kazakhstan, that's the one. I was
Yeah,
being
'cause I was
too
like,
phonetic with it.
oh, I was like, wow, he's just making up Middle Eastern countries.
I was being way too phonetic with it.
Or Western Asia,
Kazakhstan.
whatever you want to call it. Kazakhstan, yeah.
Jack's Christmas birthday.
And you thought Oogie Boogie was racist. Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh, hang on,
Sorry,
man.
sorry.
This one's gonna kill me. Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan,
Mr. Jack Tin is celebrating Christmas.
yeah. That sounds like a movie from the 50s.
Poland, Halloween Town. Just say it as it is.
That's fair. You've got to mention the fact that Christmas is involved, though.
Slovakia, Pre-Christmas Nightmare.
What's all this pre-Christmas business? Call it Halloween for fuck's sake.
Slovenia, Pre-Christmas Seas.
Slovenia? Where are you from? Slovenia, you lunatic.
Slovenia.
He's lost the run of himself now. There's no turning around.
Slovenia, Pre-Christmas Seas.
These are bad, aren't they? These are really bad.
Yeah, they're not the best, are they? I mean, I don't know what's worse. My pronunciations of fucking
Of countries, maybe.
Ukraine. I did that on purpose. Ukraine, The Horror Before Christmas.
That's a bit better. That's the best one so far.
And finally, Vietnam, The Night of Terror Before Christmas.
Again, feels like changing it for the sake of changing it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Any facts for this film?
Yeah, we got a couple. What I'm going to say, we mentioned Greg Poops, didn't we? And as a video game guy, it's not really a fact. I found out while we were doing this. Greg Poops was the voice of the Jester in Pandemonium. Do you remember that game?
I remember Pandemonium, but again, how many people remember the video game Pandemonium? I'm amazed you and I both remember Pandemonium. I don't think it lives on in the memory for many people. It wasn't a particularly good video game. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's bizarre. Maybe there's like a small committed crowd of Pandemonium fans out there we just didn't know existed.
Yeah. So, right, fact. At around 13 minutes, it is stated in the making of book that the most difficult shot to film in the entire movie is a shot when Jack is reaching for the doorknob. You've already told me that one. Moving on. I just realized as I was halfway through it, like, hang on, I've heard this before.
This sounds awfully familiar. Jesus.
It took a group of around 100 people 3 years to complete the movie. For 1 second of film, to 12 stop motion moves had to be made. For 1 second of film, 12 stop motion moves.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, stop motion has always been massively, strenuous, just on everyone's time. But
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, you can fill in some of the gaps nowadays with CG to make your life a little bit easier. But no,
It's
sure.
got to be a labor of love at that point, doesn't it, to keep it on?
Oh, 100%. But I'm so glad that they've kept it up because it is such a distinctive art style.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kubo, we've mentioned it a few times just because we both love Kubo and the Two Strings. It's an amazing film, full stop. Even if it was drawn or if it was 3D animation, but the fact that it is stop motion totally adds something to it. And again, I think it's the same as this. And what it does give it is a timelessness. Which
with the water and everything within Kubo, I think it's fantastic.
That's a gorgeous film. Yeah. So if you take one thing away from this film, because chances are, Kubo. if you're listening to this, you probably watched A Nightmare Before Christmas. Most people have, but if you haven't seen it, Kubo and the Two Strings is an absolutely fantastic, legitimately one of the greatest kids films of all. Because it is a kids film fundamentally, but it's a kids film in the same way that like Spirited Away is a kids film. It's in that upper echelon of something genuinely special.
Patrick Stewart did the original introduction for the movie, which can be heard on the film soundtrack.
Yeah. I was listening to it on the soundtrack, and I was like, I can't remember Patrick Stewart. And Bethan's seen this film, and she's another one. Unsurprising, like she's got like taste. She loves this film. She knows all the songs. We're listening to the soundtrack. She goes, "Is that Patrick Stewart?" I was like, yeah. And because I'd listened to the soundtrack and I hadn't seen the film for a while, I just convinced myself, I was like, oh, I must be at the start of the film. No, he's not. They cut it right down. And I think Santa actually does the speech in the film. But very strange.
I believe so.
Who cuts out Captain Patrick? Captain Picard?
Captain Patrick. Right, we're faltering today, and
yeah, we really are. Jesus Christ. We're just having a funny 5 minutes. That's all that is.
Zero's nose is actually a tiny glowing jack-o'-lantern.
That's very
you gotta look. Yeah, you gotta look pretty close, but yeah, it is. In the extended ending to the film, heard on the soundtrack album many years later, Santa Claus returns to Halloween Town to visit Jack and finds that Jack has about 4 or 5 skeleton children.
Oh, fair enough.
So that's in the soundtrack.
With Sally, so he comes back later or is it like skeleton kids from another relationship?
But is he... Do you make skeleton kids or do you dig them up?
I don't know. Or are they kids from his previous life? Because that's one of the other questions, like you see online a lot, is like, who was Jack Skellington when he was alive? It's like, I don't fucking know. But well, he's obviously up to no good if he's got that many kids.
A model of the evil queen from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs can be spotted briefly in the back row of the town meeting scene. What else we got here? Sally originally was supposed to have trouble walking. However, the filmmakers changed this because they thought Sally looked drunk while walking. However, it is shown that Sally walks more stiffly than other characters.
That's fair enough. Probably a wise choice.
The character of Dr. Finkelstein is listed only as evil scientist in the cast credits. This is the first stop-motion animated film to be rated PG by the MPAA.
Mm-hmm.
What else have we got here? At one point, Tim Burton considered making this a TV special rather than a feature film. I think you can see that then.
Yeah, and I think that's got like a greater legacy in the US. These TV Christmas specials, like they go way back in the US. And I think that was the idea, is like it was going to be 50, 60 minutes or something like that, which feels probably actually about right. It's kind of in a no man's land. Either you stretch it out, you add that additional narrative and make this a 90-minute film, or you go the other way and make it 60 minutes. It's almost nothing but songs. So really you feel like, well, the narrative's paper thin. It doesn't matter. It has all these songs. It's only 50 minutes long. And because it comes at 70 minutes, one of the issues with the film is that it kind of finds itself in no man's land.
Yeah. I'll end it there for the...
Cool. In terms of legacy, we mentioned the fact that, the impact it's had on the aesthetic and future of stop motion animation with Leica Studios, Coraline, Kubo and the Two Strings, Paranorman. Obviously, there was, it's not a follow-up, but the closest thing you're going to get to it is Tim Burton's Corpse Bride, which was actually directed by him and Mike Johnson. So Mike Johnson, again, took on a lot of the work for the stop motion, but Tim Burton was directly involved in the direction of this film. Admittedly, he would have been directly involved in the direction of this film if it wasn't for the fact that he was so busy at the time directing the movie we did last week, Batman Returns. So that was the reason that it wasn't like, oh, I don't want any part of this. He literally did not have the time. So hence why it went to Henry Selick. we mentioned Jack Skellington has become a Disney icon after being a bit of an old-fashioned icon for years. Like he's become this like goth pinup, even if his demeanor is far from goth. He's actually very upbeat for most of the film. Burton's first iteration of this film, we kind of allude to it, was a poem populated by ghoulish characters who tried to their hand at Christmas. Then seen as you mentioned, a potential Christmas special, blah, blah, blah. It had an Oscar nomination for Best Visual Effects, losing admittedly fairly to Jurassic Park. It's like if you're going to get beat by anyone for special effects in the Oscars, it might as well be Jurassic Park, one of the most like iconic visual effects moments in movie history, I think. Again, mentioned earlier the fact that it led to Disney willing to embrace the macabre with Coco, Frankenweenie, all these other things. If anything, it's kept Tim Burton at Disney as well, and his relationship with Disney has become close because obviously he started as an animator, but they've given him more and more power, and he went on to direct films like Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo. But it does speak to the fact that his output in later films just wasn't as you can still see that hint of Tim Burton, but when you go back and watch Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo, they don't have that auteurish element to them in the same way. You can't immediately say, well, that's definitely a Tim Burton film. So yeah, maybe he met somewhere in the middle. And if anything we found from that is that he should be able to go all in Tim Burton because it's just not the same. But I think that's pretty much it. We could go on and on in terms of legacy. As I said, video games, comics, toys, literally anything you can stick Jack Skellington's face on has Jack Skellington's face on. He's absolutely everywhere. That's the true legacy of this film. The songs have obviously lived on, but it's really the iconography which is the legacy of this film because it's everywhere. And Disney have absolutely embraced. You can go into any Disney store, you're going to find Jack Skellington at any time of year. I
said he's currently on my Christmas tree. It's ridiculous.
Unsurprising. Yeah. We've got a Jack Skellington cookie jar. He is fucking. If you've married a certain type of girl, chances are you're going to have Jack Skellington somewhere in your fucking house.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a change, so this is where we basically say if you could change one thing about this film, mine would be I'd stretch out to 90 minutes and have more oogie boogie. And basically everything that comes with that more complexity to the romance between Jack and Sally. I just think. You either go, as you mentioned, shorter, make it the Christmas special, or you make it a proper feature-length movie. And I would prefer the latter. I just think there's more story, there's more characters to work with there. I think I don't think it would lose anything by being a 90-minute movie.
So I wasn't going to do a joke one this week. I wasn't going to. I've done a joke, make a change for the last couple of weeks. I wasn't going to do one this week, but then we brought it up while we were on. I want to see the Independence Day version.
No, I would love to see. That is an amazing shout. It's like the sequel to this film where he walks through the door and immediately runs into aliens and Will Smith. It's like, what the fuck? Jeff Goldblum, Jesus Christ. Oh, yeah, dude, they would have amazing banter. Imagine Jeff Goldblum and Jack Skellington in the room together. That would be absolute cool. Just fuck off Will Smith. He's kind of cancelled now, whatever the fuck's going on. And just have the movie where you replace Will Smith with Jack Skellington and he just goes down with Jeff Goldblum. That would be amazing.
So I want to see the Independence Day version of that.
That's a great
the real answer.
You said it's a joke. I'm taking that as the real answer now. That's absolutely gold as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the other real answer is more Oogie Boogie. Make him a bigger threat to Halloween Town.
Yeah, he feels like this kind of existential threat, which just kind of immediately leads to fundamentally a boss battle. But there's no build up to it. Jack, again, it never feels like Jack's really aware of what's going on with Oogie Boogie or really cares. He just suddenly has to deal with Oogie Boogie and does so in double quick time. And that's the end of Oogie Boogie.
How did he even know they were there? He just appeared at Oogie Boogie's house at the right time. So yeah, it was a bit weird. So I think more of him would have made the film feel better, feel more of a threat within Halloween Town. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of video games, Jack Skellington now appears in just about anything Disney related. He was in Disney Infinity, the Square Enix crossover series Kingdom Hearts, Disney Heroes Battle Mode, Disney Dreamlight Valley is a recent game for Series X and PS5. He's in that, and any number of mobile games. In terms of actual Nightmare Before Christmas games, there was an Oogie's Revenge. Was it Oogie Boogie's Revenge or Oogie's Revenge? That came out on the original Xbox and PS2, which was like an action adventure game a la Devil May Cry, and it was surprisingly decent. It's kind of like Devil May Cry for kids, but played out if you go back and look at it, especially when people have like high-res the visuals, it still looks really good. And similarly, there was a Pumpkin King game for the GBA, which was basically, again, a kid's version of Castlevania, and it never reached those heights and very much played out like most GBA games did. but it was good. They were solid interpretations of the film, and they've got the music, the aesthetic, all that jazz. So yeah, a couple of decent video games for Nightmare Before Christmas. If I was going to have a modern day one, basically there are two options. If you're going to do it 2D, I would have Playdead Studios, so basically something akin to Limbo, but not quite as existential and horrifying as that. So a little bit more cheerful, but played in the same kind of style. If 3D, I would go to Sony Computer Entertainment Studios, Cambridge, to do a medieval spin-off with Jack Skellington. I'm not sure if you remember Medieval.
Yeah.
The only problem with Medieval is aesthetically it's ticking all the boxes. They actually re-released it for PS4, PS5 a couple of years ago. The game is dog shit, and it always was dog shit. People have fond memories of it, kind of like what was the game you said earlier? Not Paranormal. Pandemonium. Yeah. It's fundamentally it's just not a very good game, but conceptually it's a sound idea, and I think if you replace the medieval character with Jack Skellington, it would totally work. So I go with that. Either that, or you get Capcom in to do Oogie's Revenge 2 and do it properly.
For me, it's a Sackboy skin, isn't it?
Oh, that's a great shout. Yeah, you can totally have Sackboy as They probably already do have a Sackboy as Jack Skellington.
When I saw like the look, especially with Oogie Boogie right at the end, because you see him at the beginning as a shadow. Or at the end, when he is just a large potato sack, it just reminds. It's a Sackboy skin.
It's the perfect answer. I can totally envision Sackboy, but with a Jack Skellington skin. You have the level design like Tim Burton's, and of course, such a big part of that game is the music. And you just have the classic tunes in the background. The last boss is a sack-related boss with Oogie Boogie. For fuck's sake, you just every week. I'm supposed to be the video game guy. Motherfucker. Yeah, so the correct answer is Little Big Planet. Son of a bitch.
But he did his own. So it was Little Big Planet, but he did his own end, didn't he? He had his own game, Sackboy, if I remember rightly.
Well, it was called Sackboy Adventure, I think it was called, and that was the PS4, PS5 one, the most recent one. But it's fundamentally still Little Big Planet. It's just they changed the name slightly because there were 3 Little Big Planet games, and then they had Sackboy's Adventure. I think it's called Sackboy's Adventure anyway. But yeah, it's the same kind of gameplay style. But yeah, I want to see the spin-off of that now as much as you do with. God damn it! Such a great answer. Scores and recommendations. I'll go first because it's pretty obvious to me. It's 4 and a yes for Halloween or Christmas or both. Doesn't matter. It does have its problems. It's narratively limited. The second half does drop off a cliff. I don't think that's too much of an exaggeration. It's just not neat. It's because the first half is so brilliant that the drop off is more pronounced, I think. But because it's only 70 minutes, it doesn't really matter. The songs are great. The animation's great. It's a really fun watch. Like I said, whichever time of year you decide to watch it, an easy 4 and an easy recommendation for me.
It's a 3 for me. Like there's a lot that I couldn't get on with, taking the animation and the first couple of songs aside. It's started to have a drop off. It's not a terrible drop off, but it's no bigger than a 3 for me.
Yeah,
recommendations a bit tricky because there are recommendations to children for this. I don't think I could recommend this to an adult that hasn't seen it because I've seen it once before. Turns out I've only seen half of it. I think because I can't remember the second half. So. I don't think it would be one that I would say to an adult, "Oh, you got to watch this. It's great." But to be fair, aside from me, I don't know anyone else that hasn't seen this film.
Yeah, it's weird because, like you said, it feels like everybody's seen this film. I would more tentatively recommend this to it, like you said, an adult who hasn't seen it. I have got friends who I suspect haven't seen this film, and I probably wouldn't recommend it to them because I'm just like I feel like a certain kind of person is going to latch onto this, and it isn't for everyone. But like you said. For kids in particular, it's a great gateway into horror. It's a great starting point. Like I said, start here, then you go to even maybe the Goonies, which has like a little bit of horror. It's a little bit scarier. Like, Monster Squad, as we mentioned. And then, the sky's the fucking limit then. You'll be watching Saw 7 next year. Who knows? So that's pretty much it, I think, for Nightmare Before Christmas. So next week, the final part of our Christmas season of Hey You Guys podcast is your choice, sir, which is turned into... And this wasn't planned, but it's very much turned into the alternative Christmas Hey You Guys podcast. You think of the films we've done: Batman Returns, Nightmare Before Christmas, Bad Santa, and are you going to keep up the tradition of alternative Christmas movies now?
Well, it's got Santa in, official Santa. Okay, so let me ask you something. Do you like Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters?
I've seen it once. It was fine.
Do you remember the film Dead Snow or Dead Snow 2 Red versus Dead?
I remember. I'm aware of them. I've not watched them.
Okay. I'm a big fan of the director Tommy Wirkola, or Wirkola, depending on where he's from. Norwegian director. And this is one of the latest films we've ever done. It was released last year.
Okay,
David Harbour playing Santa, Violent Night.
I've not actually seen it. I know there's a pretty big deal about it, and I think it did relatively well at the box office. But no, I have not seen this film. I don't know why. I remember thinking, it's like, oh, this looks like it might be up my alley, but I never got around to it. So, which has worked out well because I get to watch it for the first time this week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to.
But if nothing else, even if it is terrible, it has ticked the box. I mean, that is an alternative Christmas film. It's not a traditional one. Based on the fact that it's called Violent Night, and I'm pretty sure, dare I say, that he kills a lot of people. This version of Santa.
David Harbour playing Santa Claus, John Leguizamo playing Scrooge. You know,
a Scrooge.
Playing a character.
See, I don't know anything about this film. I know. I'm quite looking forward to it.
Beverly D'Angelo's in it.
And if you're interested, if you haven't seen it like me, it's currently on Sky Movies. So if you have Sky Movies, you can watch it on there. So you don't have to pay for it unless
we're going to be joined by Dave, as he always joins us for a Christmas episode because we're all together. So.
And we might be not pissed, but we'll have a couple of beers because this is our we've had our Christmas season of podcasts, but we always kind of celebrate because we're obviously recording this over WhatsApp because I live up in Edinburgh. Rob and Dave live down in Cardiff. I go back down to Cardiff for Christmas, so this is like the one podcast a year where we're all in the same room together. So we'll have a couple of beers. We're not going to be messy because I've heard podcasts where people are drunk. It's only fun for the people recording. It's like when people when people eat on podcasts, go fuck yourself. We're not going to be doing that. We're just going to have a couple of drinks. It might be a little bit merry, but this seems like a perfectly suitable time of year and a perfectly suitable movie to have a couple of beers with it. So
in all fairness, I still have a recording that we tried to do whilst drunk.
I was the only one sober enough to know that it was a fucking train wreck. I was like, dude, stop. Like Dave was so fucked. I was like, he's just talking bollocks. This is not working. And like you said, you tried to listen back. It was just a mess.
It's not good. In all fairness, we did think it was a good idea to record another episode at midnight after we met at like 4 p.m. It wasn't a good idea.
It was always doomed. So we're not doing that. We're meeting early. We're going to record this with our first couple of drinks. So it's going to be good fun, I promise you. But as always, thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of podcast, the Christmas season of podcast. Do join us for the last part, Violent Night, next week. Anything else to add before we wrap the show up?
Nope, just hope you all have a good Christmas because the next one will probably be released after Christmas. So have a great Christmas and we will see you soon.
Yeah, cool. I've been Liam. This has been Rob and you have been listening to Hey Guys Podcast. See you next week, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Hey, you guys!